All right, everybody, we're live today. This is Tea with Gabriel, and our guest is John Marty. John, welcome. Pleasure to have you.
What's up, Gabriel? Thanks for having me, man.
Very nice chatting with you. And John, for our listeners that don't know you,
Yeah.
can you tell us a bit about your journey and where you are and how you ended up where you are?
Yeah. Currently at Amazon, I'm a senior product manager on a team called New Business Innovation. Basically, we're just designing new experiences for customers across Amazon. And it's a really exciting role. And then a side project that I have that I'm really passionate about, I do a lot of posting content on LinkedIn, do a lot of YouTube videos as well on career-related topics, personal branding, really trying to leverage all of who you are to the world so you can kind of maximize your opportunities. But one of my big passion projects that I have is a project called Project 1B. And it's essentially a foundation I started recently. And it's all about empowering, or the mission is to empower 1 billion people around the world to think differently about their lives and their careers and to chase the word meaning as opposed to the word success, because the word success typically denotes in our society a chase for money, which often leads people on the wrong path. So we're trying to convert the word of chasing happiness to the word meaning so that people can get there. And then a whole bunch of ancillary steps along the journey as well, teaching about mindfulness, just living with purpose and things like that. So that's really a big passion project for me.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot for us to unpack. So
yeah.
But just so I get it, so this a lot of it seems I've been reading a lot of your posts, and you seem to be very focused on promoting goodness and helping people through things that you experienced yourself. I don't know if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know that at least based on what I've read from you, like it was a bumpy ride. It wasn't like always smooth.
Yeah.
And can you share a little bit about how it was for you to get where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's interesting when when you're in college or when you're in a high school environment, you kind of think that life is going to be very linear, right? And I don't know where that actually comes from. I don't know if that comes from family, right? Like who injects that into our brains? I'm not sure, right? Because as we get older, we all learn that is not the case at all. And so it's pretty fascinating, right? It becomes this shocker type of moment where you go, oh my God, like it's not about like the house and the car and the picket fence. Like there's a lot of complexity here, right? And so, for me, went to college, did the normal high school college thing, right? Like I failed out of high school, didn't like it, didn't understand it. A lot of weird things going on with that. We can unpack that if you want to, but just, I just hated the experience in general. Wasn't a fan of any of it. It didn't make sense to me. I got into entrepreneurship early on. And it was 21 years old. I started a company with a friend of mine, a college buddy of mine. We were both juniors in college, and it was a small electronics business. Nothing special, not like a tech startup, nothing sexy. It was just an opportunity. We followed opportunity, right? We said, hey, we're mildly interested in audio and speakers and TVs. And so let's start a business with those things. And we did. And, it was a little 700 square foot startup in Durango, Colorado, a handful of employees that we had when we first started. And we had a really bumpy ride at first couple of years. It was really tough, but we wound up doing a couple $1 million in sales. After a couple of years, getting ramped up, we had a number of different installation trucks running through the city. I sold the business to my partner in 2012. This seems like forever ago now. And he's still running it, right? So the company's been around for 20 years. It's really cool that it's still there. It's really neat. But anyway, started a second startup. Thought that I would really be able to conquer the world, because that's really what I wanted to do at that point, right? I had a lot of hubris going into it. I'm like, I made some money. I'm going to start this other company, and I'm going to be a billionaire, and I'm going to drive a Bugatti and whatever. But anyway, life did not happen that way. I had these big dreams for this smart home technology company, and I went down to Miami, moved to Miami with a partner. A partner had a $120 million a year flooring business. He was well connected with architects and designers, and he brought me into a world that had never existed for me.
Wow.
So it was like a romanticized experience, right?
Right.
Guy in a small town, Durango, Colorado, and then I wound up, moving over to Miami. And here's this guy. He's got Ferraris and Lamborghinis and all this crap, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be your partner. But anyway, we wound up doing this thing for about 2 years. Didn't wind up working out. Didn't work out at all. And so it was. It wound up being. It just wound up losing all my money, and
Wow.
I went broke pretty quick after 2 years. I think it was a combination of trying to live the lifestyle that he was living,
Mm.
and then also trying to maintain the business, right? So a combination of things that led to the demise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't point to any one thing. It was just a handful of different things that correlate, that combined to make that experience not work out. So I kind of limped back to Colorado and had to reinvent myself all over again. Nobody would hire me. I had a baby on the way, and so
Wow.
a lot of weird transition things that were happening. It's like early 30s, no job prospects. Because what a lot of people don't tell you is if you try to start a company, the longer you're in the game of the entrepreneurship, the less chance you have of getting back into corporate America, because nobody will hire you. Nobody.
Of course.
And it doesn't matter what level you're at. You could be, you could be the CMO, you could be just a partner, you could be whatever. But if you don't have corporate on your resume, that's it. You're done. So I found that out the hard way. I was like, hey, I'm valuable. Hire me. And nobody would hire me. So I took a job at Best Buy, $12 an hour, 31 years old.
Wow.
So
after having two businesses that you founded, and a quick question. It seems, I mean, I may be wrong here, but you seem like someone who's very personally invested in the projects that you do.
Yeah.
More than like just, let's say, the financial failure. Would you also say you were heartbroken by the not being able to make that second business take off? Or
yeah, I mean,
how did that make you emotionally?
Yeah, it was terrible, man. I mean, I'd go home crying every night like a baby. I mean, I was in bad shape because everything had kind of fallen apart. I mean, you imagine you spend 10, 11 years building up a nest egg of something, right?
Yep.
From your 20s. Now you're 30. You have some money. You could do something. You could pick a path, right? And I said, I'm going to go all in, all chips. And I went all in, and I could have done a million other things, right? I could have invested in real estate at that time. I could have bought 2 or 3 houses at that time, right? And just sat on them.
Right.
But I decided not to. I decided to dive in. And so, yeah, I was heartbroken, but it was an ego-breaking, heartbreaking experience that wound up turning out to be, for me, the best experience that's ever happened to me.
Wow. And how did you put yourself back together? What were, you think, the key ingredients there?
Yeah, all I had was a hypothesis. I said, okay, I need to make some money, right? Like I wasn't chasing passion. I was chasing opportunity. Like my first company was chasing opportunity. I was mildly interested. Then I went into the smart home technology, mildly interested in it. I knew a lot about it. I thought there was an opportunity. I jumped in. And can you hear me okay? Oh, you just went on mute. Okay. So I was mildly interested. And then when it came to this scenario of just like, what do I do with my life? Then it was, okay, hypothesis is I can make a lot of money in tech. How do I do that? I have no idea. What do I do? I have no connections in tech. I'm from small town Ohio. I don't know anybody. Right? Like I'm not from California. I don't have any friends in California. I don't have any friends in Seattle. I've never been to Seattle. Like there's zero connection point for me. But I said, I'm going to get into tech. And so I started working backwards from a hypothesis that I could make good money in tech. The first thing I did was I said, I'm going to get an MBA. So I took out a bunch of student loans for an MBA because I said, I need to check the boxes. Not because of the education. I need to check the boxes. right? I knew that the network I had to build myself, but I figured corporate still wants me to check the boxes. I'm going to do it. So I did. Then at the same time, I wound up going to software development school. There was a software development school that opened up in Denver called Galvanize.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing a 6-month boot camp, and they had only done 5 classes ever. It was like right in the 2015 arena when software boot camps were like just getting started. Nobody knew what they were, and it was right down the street for me.
Wow.
So I said, "Shit, I'm going to do this." Jumped into that. So I did an MBA in software at the same time, and at that time I was working at Best Buy, that whole time as well, and that led me to American Express. So they came, they were doing a recruiting event, and I said, I don't want to be an engineer. I said, I hate engineering. I don't want to touch it. I only did this crap to validate my resume. I want to be a product manager. I didn't say that to them, but I'm saying that to you. Because it was an absolutely miserable experience for me. I absolutely hated it. So, but I knew I needed it to validate myself.
So it's fair to say that you kind of like reverse engineered the process. You started from where you needed to be, and you just figured out the steps, which by itself is an amazing skill. And I think, I mean, it's one thing to be able to do it conceptually. It's another thing to work it out. Particularly, I'm curious, you mentioned you had a really terrible experience in high school, and it seems like traditional education doesn't quite, let's say, go with the grain in terms of how you think.
Yeah.
How was the MBA for you?
The MBA was good for me. So I talk crap a lot about traditional education on LinkedIn a lot, and I think it's often misunderstood. Because people think I'm bashing teachers, and I'm not bashing teachers. I love teachers. I think they're great. I teach how to get into tech, right? Like I love teaching topics that I know and love about, right? Like it's a passion of mine. So I'm not ragging on teachers. I'm ragging on the institutions and where the money flows, and this whole paradigm of education is just ridiculous. It's like you have corporations that believe that a traditional education from a top school validates you as an individual and being more educated than somebody who went the independent education route, which makes no sense. Like there's zero correlation just to somebody's like degree paper and their their value. But I get it because that's the only way that a company can validate you, right? They can look at your bullet points of experience and go, maybe this person did this. I don't know. Right. So the whole chain is broken in the first place. And I think what LinkedIn does, I mean, and obviously this is an ancillary conversation, but what LinkedIn does is it allows everyone to change the paradigm of how hiring and how personality can be shown online, and what when people talk about their passions, that those opportunities can flow to them. So it becomes this hub for that, for third-party validation, right? And they have that element of third-party validation when it comes to their, the LinkedIn Learning, right? And so as they layer more and more of those things on the platform, then the validation from a university becomes less and less important, right? So anyway, I find that to be pretty fascinating. But I mean, I got bullied a lot when I was in middle school and stuff, man. I mean, unlike not unlike a lot of other people, right? Like kids are mean shitheads when you're little to everybody. So
no, I agree, and I mean, definitely feels like we're in a turning point in terms of like we're in an institutional crisis when it comes towards education, right? I mean,
we are.
People are amassing all kinds of debt. The debt doesn't translate anymore into like certain career paths and opportunities as it did previously. Yeah. So I heard this comment today, which was just perfect. Universities now, there are like over 100 universities in the U.S. with $1 billion plus endowments. So they're essentially like hedge funds.
They're hedge funds. Schools are hedge funds.
That sell textbooks, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
There's something broken there for sure. And I see like the future path that you're describing with a platform like LinkedIn, being able to put together all these like subcomponents of like basically where, at least what I'm understanding is like breaking down the validation process into smaller subcomponents that can be componentized, as opposed to like giving someone one Harvard seal that says that they're better than anybody else. So now all of a sudden you have like all these different badges that you can collect, and they're more democratized, more accessible. I can see that path happening. But you're talking also about something deeper, I think, which is this idea that education, at least this, I didn't say these words, but I guess this is, I heard this through the subcontext.
Yeah, sure.
This idea that education is more about a personal journey than it is about jumping through hoops. At least that's the way I look at it, and that's the way I wish. If I can wish something for my kids, that's what I would like them to experience as they grow and develop.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is just like a romantic idea, or do you think it's possible for us as a society to build education more as a personal journey than as like all these like check boxes that need to be fulfilled?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely should be a personal journey, and I think we're heading towards that. Like, COVID has enabled, well, I mean, maybe painfully for some families. I mean, it depends on how many kids you have and how spread out they are as far as their grades, and if both parents work. Right? There's a lot of components here. Right? Like, we're set up as a society where kids go to school for 8 hours a day, which enables parents to both co-work, and that's our structure. Right. But COVID has changed the structure, and it depends on how long COVID goes on, or what other pandemics or whatever come down the pipeline that cause people to say, I have to shift my priorities. And this is like a generational shift, right? So now people are saying, okay, I'm not going to send my kid to school. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm either going to have them learn the curriculum from school, or I'm going to teach them the curriculum that I want to teach them. But when you do homeschool, anybody who knows anything about like doing homeschooling with their own kids, we homeschool our son, but my wife takes care of it because I'm working. She winds up doing that, and I'm super thankful for that. But it's a 2-hour day, or it's not an 8-hour day. My 7-year-old used to go to school for 8 hours, right? Mainly because it's a glorified babysitting camp, right? That's all it is. Like, because the actual value of learning per day, because she's got all the same books and curriculum, right? When you condense it down, there's no commuting time. It's 2 hours back to back. And then everything else was recess, walking to and from, driving there, driving back. And like, that's it. Right. So, and lunch. So I think what it allows us to do is, fine, check the boxes, do the curriculum, but then learn what you want and play. And you don't have to take things so incredibly serious, because grades don't really matter. Like, I am proof that grades don't matter at all. Okay. Like, I got the worst GPA in the world, the worst. Like, I failed out of high school, for God's sake. I went to like the smallest college in the world. Like, do you know Fort Lewis College? Have you heard of Fort Lewis College? Well, perfect. Yeah. Nobody else has either. Right. Right. So everything turned out okay for me. And I, sometimes I wonder, like, if my son got into skateboarding, and, sometimes I wonder, like, does skateboarding on its own create a better learning journey for somebody than going to school for 8 hours a day? And my argument would be 100% hell yes, it does. And the reason why is because it teaches you the single best lesson in life. It teaches you that you have to fail 5 billion times for every single thing that you want to do to find any inkling of success. And school doesn't teach you that at all. No. School says, here, learn this. And I say, but I don't want to learn this. But they say, but that's how you be successful. It's like, well, that's bullshit. I don't agree with that. But you're making me take this subject, right? What if all I want to do during the day is read anime? I don't know. Or read about gardening because I'm super interested in it. Well, you know what? If you spend 15 years doing that, and that was your primary focus, and you created a blog and you were passionate about it, then by the time you're 20 years old, dude, you'd have a multi-million-dollar business, because everybody would know you as the authority for that thing. So I think we totally changed the paradigm around for all of education. I don't think we need institutional walls when it comes to education.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. Even that, but how? So I'm curious. Like, I have 3 kids, and 2 of them are in school age, 2nd grade and 5th grade right now, and we're doing this kind of like middle ground thing where like they're still in school remotely, whatever that means.
Yeah, I know, whatever the hell that means.
But we try to give them a lot of freedom to go after their own things, and so far, I it's interesting. Even though they're in formal school, the COVID situation really did give them so much more bandwidth in terms of personal exploration and in terms of time, like you mentioned. But in terms of your experience, what have been some of like the unexpected, I guess, challenges and opportunities homeschooling your son?
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, so we only have one son, right? So I think so not that many challenges, but tons of opportunities.
Cool.
Now, if you have 2 or 3 kids, that changes dramatically.
You think so? Why is that?
Well, So here's it now. Like, and I don't know personally. All I can say is that if I were to multiply kid 1 with another, and then separate them out by grade, and then both parents were working, and you had to focus on a curriculum for one kid, the other, and make sure that they're all completing the assignments, then you're not like. Then it becomes your full-time job. And if you have a full-time job, then you now no longer have a life. Right. So like there's that. And I think we're just fortunate in our situation where it's one kid, he's 7, my wife stays at home. So it's awesome. Right. Like our lives have been impacted very positively from this whole scenario because we were prepared for it, not knowing that it was even going to happen.
Got it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say that it like there's a challenging scale when it comes to homeschooling, and
it's like the count of kids, and if you're both husband and wife work, it increases the complexity quite a bit.
And I guess just switching gears a bit, just so painting the picture of who John is. So you struggled through school. You did really well. At least I would say you did really well in your first business. After all, it's an amazing feat just to get a business off its ground, particularly like something that you self-fund and start off. And even though you say it's not sexy, I actually think that's the sexiest business there is, because it's based on opportunity. It's based on something real. It's not based on like some crazy PowerPoint presentation with some wacko numbers you pulled together.
Right.
It's based on something tangible. You were delivering value, and you managed to put that together. So I see tremendous success in that. And then, but it also seems that everything that you do, I mean, at least 3 things that I can see, 4 that I can see that so you have your Project 1B, you have a ton of followers on LinkedIn, you're successful at Amazon, you did that business really well. So it seems that everything that you do somehow, I mean, you make things work, even when they don't work. And I guess my question is, and then you also help other people find their path, and you mentor and all of that. But I guess my question is, do you think what you have is teachable and in some way can be multiplied? Or do you think there's like a very particular set of characteristics that define you as a person that enable you to have this kind of like flexibility and meaning, not to call it success?
Yeah. That's good. It's an interesting question. As I try to think through that, I'm an Enneagram 3. So I don't know if you've done the Enneagram. So the Enneagram test, right? For anybody who doesn't know who's watching, right? There's like a number of different personality types that they bucketize you based on a series of questions, right? So it's like a 45-minute test. It's very eye-opening. In the first paragraph of the Enneagram, it said that, so I'm an achiever. I'm a number 3. So I always need to be achieving, right? Like I can't be relaxing. Right. And so, and it talks about who you are at your best, at the middle, and at your worst. And it's dead on. And one of the things it said is like, you thrive on, like, you're the type of person who probably gives career advice. And I was like, that's hilarious, because that's what I do on LinkedIn. I was like, who the hell, what mystic created this profile for me? It's exactly who I am. But it's funny when you see it in words, right? But I think that it is part of my personality type, right? And I think that's also why there's a million different types of jobs, and some people are great in healthcare, and some people are great as nurses, and some people are great as entrepreneurs, right? That's the beauty of all of this. Everybody's different. I think that I've always been an achiever, but the failures are what gave me the perspective to create something like 1B, because 1B is all about chasing something totally different that we never think to chase in society. So I think the failure was the key to everything for me. And I think that, it also kind of made me really hungry and started looking at things, like, because a lot of people's lives in America are like really comfortable, right? Like, people complain about a lot of crap, but like, if you think about an experience that somebody's having in another country who is living in like sheer poverty, right? Like, the fact that I have electricity is my baseline level of gratitude. And so I start there, but then I also have this perspective of like being really hungry when I was broke, you know? So I don't know. It's like a combination of perspective and hunger and it was a hunger that I didn't really have before. And a lot of young adults, they always ask me like, well, how do you find the motivation to like do what you're doing? And it's like, I, I, I found the motivation because like, I never want that to happen to me again. Like, it was a great lesson, but I don't want it to happen again. Right. So, so it's rooted in that.
But there's this really interesting combination that you mentioned, like you're an achiever, restless, you want to get things done,
Yeah.
but you don't check all the traditional boxes. That puts you in a state of dissonance.
Yeah.
And which is really amazing. I mean, in the sense that the way I see it, and it puts you in a make it or break it kind of situation, because people that have this kind of characteristic like you do, either you find the power to carve your own path and charge forward regardless of what's going on. It's really hard to just succumb and say, you know what, like, this world isn't just made for me. And you had that resilience, and you have that resilience that carries you through. Yeah. But I guess, and have you found ways to teach this, or is this something that just belongs to people and either they have that or they don't? Because I have tremendous respect for that. I think that's super special, and I think, if anything, those are the things that people should learn, because those are the things that are priceless and that, carry you throughout life and situations much larger than work or not. But I really wonder, can you pass that on?
Yeah, so that's something that I've been working on for a long time, actually, for a couple of years, is just, what is it? Like, what is it about failure that leads you to asking the right questions? And do you need failure to ask yourself the right questions about life? I don't think you do, right? It's just that failure it forces you to say, whoa, wait, like, who am I really? And what do I actually want? Because like, if everything gets kind of taken away, then the whole societal model starts kind of crumbling, and you go, like, I'm not my car. I'm not my job title. I'm not my goals. Because if you associate your sense of self-worth to all those things, then you're going to fail. Then you're going to fail. Right. Or if you say, like, if you think like happiness is a destination, then you're going to fail. Right. So I'm always checking.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you think you're inevitably going to fail? Because what if you do manage to like go through life, quote unquote, successfully, and checking all the boxes, accumulating material wealth? If there is no failure, what happens then? Is there a learning opportunity?
But I think the failure comes in the discontent.
Okay, so you think it's going to be there regardless?
It's there regardless, because it's the hedonic treadmill, right? It is the dopamine rush from buying something, from getting the new job, that then subsides, and then you are chasing something new, right? And I think that as soon as you chase something new, each time, is when you separate your mental model of, this is going to bring me happiness, and you just say, it's a thing, it's a goal. It doesn't define who I am, right? Some people say, well, never communicate your goals to the world, right? It's like, I think differently about that. I don't really care. I'll tell you my goals. I'll tell you my goals tomorrow. Like I'll my step-by-step plan. Like, and if I fail, that's fine. Because I don't attach my sense of self-worth or happiness to it. Right. So I always try to maintain this like baseline, like here I am, here's my happiness today. I'm grateful for what I have. Right. And it's a constant work in progress because humans are not built that way.
No.
Right.
I agree.
They need to chase. And I think some of it is primal as well. Right. Like if you think a male wants to make a ton of money because, it's no longer like, you're in the wild. You're not like catching boar meat. You're the making of the money is your status to attract the mate. Right. So, there's a lot of primal things involved in it too. But I think after you pass your 20s, you start kind of realizing like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to do that anymore.
But I guess just sticking and forgive me for my persistence there.
Oh, dude, no problem.
Again, I think, when a lot of people, in my opinion, won't necessarily have that grit, that determination, that restlessness that you have, that somehow, made you persevere and thrive even in adverse conditions, even through really big challenges. I mean, a lot of people would have either given up or just still have been at Best Buy. Well, you went through some hard times and you made it through the other end, and without, and I guess the key thing I want to point out is that it's not like you became bitter or jaded or anything, but because of that, quite the opposite. It seems that if anything, you became more grateful, more appreciative, more, a lighter approach on life. And I guess my question is, that's a really positive and beautiful journey that not everybody gets to experience. A lot of people I know are, for instance, they may be in their late 30s or early 40s, but they're getting mentally old and they're thinking, more and more in a bitter or cringy kind of way. And I guess that to me is the bigger spiritual teaching that you bring along. And my question is, how, I guess it's kind of like a Buddhist thing, can you just, is there like a prescriptive theory that you can give people, or can you just kind of like point the way? Like how does that?
Yeah, totally. So it all comes down to what is your why, right? It all comes down to finding your why, right? And it's interesting, like, Simon Sinek's this, like, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so a lot of people don't know why they do what they do. And I think you have to start there, and you have to recognize, like, so there's this foundational element of this whole thing. It's like, okay, we spend 8 hours a day at work every day, 2,000 plus hours a year. And yet it's funny when somebody talks to me and says, John, I need your help. And I go, sure, like, I'm happy to help. Like, what do you need? We'll get on the phone for an hour and I just listen. All I do is listen. And at the end of the phone call, I often receive a comment like, that was the most enlightening conversation I've had. And it's like, I didn't talk, man. I didn't talk. What I did was I just probed your own psyche. That's all I did. And I think that's what people have to do. They have to say consciously, how many hours a year do I spend on any kind of self-discovery? 1? It's a 0. I think most people probably spend 30 minutes in that one-off conversation in a coffee shop, and then they go, wow, I feel a little bit enlightened, and so we're very myopically focused on like our job and the next step, and like, and that's fine. That's like what people do. And I did that too, but it's important to zoom out. It's important to be really conscious and say, as a first step, like, what do I want? And the way you figure that out is by chasing the energy. That's it. You just chase the energy. And it may sound silly, but it's like, what do I love doing? What do I love doing? What do I love talking about? Right? I love meeting new people. I love being on podcasts and talking about these types of meaty topics, right? Because it gets my brain going. I love writing on LinkedIn. I love talking about disrupting traditional education and personal branding. I love it. Right? And notice, if you look through my posts, I don't talk a lot about product management, but that's my day job.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think it's so what is important to do is to say, what do I love doing, devoid of any kind of societal norms? What would I do if I didn't need to make money doing it? And the way that's the foundational question, right? So you first have this layer of like, okay, What do I love doing? And I need to make a conscious effort to spend a little bit more time on my discovery of what I want to do. And then it's chasing the energy. What do I love and what do I hate? Right? Bucketize, love, hate, follow the energy, right? And then and then there's a foundational question after that. It's, what would I do if I didn't need to make money, and how does that help others? How would I be most passionate about it? Doesn't have anything to do with the money, because right now what we do is we chase happiness. Happiness means money. The more money we have, the happier we think we'll be. Right? That I think that is foundationally false. Right? So if you break that concept with that question, and then you can say, oh, I love gardening. Like, I've always loved gardening. I could just do it all day and I would never need to get paid doing it. That is what you should be creating free social media content for every single day, every day. And it's a long game, and you have to play it, and it's think 10 years out. And you know what? Because it's not about the money, that's exactly why you'll be successful with it, because you didn't start with the foundation of money, right? You start at the foundation of, I love this. I love it, right?
Yep.
That's what you do. And then even better, if you can root it in personal story, right? I do it because of why. And circling back to the Simon Sinek Start With Why, right? People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? Why do you love gardening? What is the personal story involved in the fact that you got into it in the first place? Because people are going to latch onto that, man. And they're going to be like, this person is just not a robotic set of resume bullet points. This person has a deep sense of meaning in this topic, right? And the reason why I put a lot of career-related advice on LinkedIn is because of my why, because I failed, you know? And I want people to kind of just see the perspective that I have, because hopefully it can help somebody. So anyway, that's the long-winded kind of like structure of how I think about finding that why and defining it.
I love that. I think that's super useful and helpful. And I guess it helps me understand a ton of things, but there's a hidden ability that you carry. That's the ability to deconstruct logic and to rebuild it as your own. However it is that you've learned this. You've learned how to ask the right questions so that you can get to the why. And even in that conversation that you said, dude, I didn't say anything. Yeah. You did steer at least through one question or another, even if you remained quiet. Most
you
of the
can steer. Yeah.
You did point people somehow in a different direction, or you shed light in something that was a little bit hidden or dark. That ability, is that teachable? How do you teach that to people? Not the ability to, like, I get how people can find the why through coaching or mentorship or being pointed in the right direction, but that thing that comes from within, being able to have these like deconstructive conversations where, like, you pull yourself out of the matrix and understand what's going on. How does that come about?
The matrix is related solely to the chase for the wrong things. That's it. As soon as you for me, this was for me. Like, as soon as I recognized that I wasn't my shit that I owned, that was freeing, right? So then you talk about logic, right? And it's like, the failure led me to asking the questions. So I started reading a number of different books. And a bunch of people who had come before me had figured this out, right? Like, I'm just basically learning what they took a lifetime to learn. And they all came to the same conclusion. They're like, it's not the chase for money. Like, if you want happiness, then the correlation of happiness to money, and the more money you earn, that's the wrong path, right? You're not going to find it there. That's also why so many people in Hollywood or mega stars, right? You have musicians or what have you. You see these people who commit suicide, right? And you go, why? Why on earth did they commit suicide? Right? Because what they were chasing was rooted in something that was not foundational to a sense of meaning necessarily. They were chasing something to maximize the money that they had so they could buy the Bentley and the plane, because they thought that those things were actually going to give them the happiness. And then they feel this void and they don't know how to fill it because they had no conscious awareness of the fact that it wasn't the chase for money. What they needed to chase was the meaning. That's everything. And as soon as you start recognizing that question, right? Like, if I'm chasing meaning, then I'm going to be looking at a whole different set of questions. Then everything starts falling in line from there. It's just one foundational thing. That's it.
I mean, I love that. I subscribe to it. But and I guess my question is, we've known this stuff for thousands of years, right? If you talk about samsara, if you talk about Buddhism, if you talk about, teachings of Christ, I mean, all major religions really focus a lot of energy on this idea that chasing material wealth won't get people really where they want to be, and you need to figure out meaning, and you need to figure out the whys and the unchanging, and sometimes somehow break free from this hedonic treadmill, samsara, whatever it is, this cycle of suffering, right? But you've seemed to put things together in your head and integrate that knowledge into experience.
Yeah.
And I guess that's really what I want to focus on. Like, so you got this knowledge and you managed to somehow channel it through your being.
Yeah.
That I see very few people being able to do. Even though the knowledge, so what I'm saying is that the knowledge is available.
Yeah.
Some people think they're practicing this through mindfulness or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Very few people I get to talk to really get to experience this like you do.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is why, and is there something that we can do to improve that? Or is it just, a fundamental human shortcoming of being able to put these more abstract ideas into practice?
No, I think one of the elements in here is that you have to look at the goals and the things you want, and you have to say, why do I want them? Because that's what I wound up doing, right? Like, for a long time, I wanted, there's this watch that I wanted to buy, right? And this watch was like almost $8,000. So I bought this watch in my 20s, and I didn't have the money to buy this watch, right? So I put $1,000 down, and I was making $400 a month payments on this watch.
Wow.
And that watch held a lot of power over me. And I think the question that started to break my mental track, along with the, chasing the meaning and some of the other kind of sub questions and finding your why, right? But like, one of the other foundational things is, like, if you're going about your day, it's like, why do I want a brand new handbag, right? As a woman, like, why do I want the shoes? Or as a man, why do I want that watch? It's like, is it for me, or is it to validate my sense of self-worth in society? Because the only reason we buy most things, like a fancy car, is to show that we're of value in society, right? So as soon as I look at something, I go, okay, that car right there, I want that car. Why do I want that car? It's just asking yourself a handful of questions. Why do I want it? Well, I don't know why I want it. It's pretty damn cool, but like, what do I really want it? Do I want it to show off? What's the feeling I'm going to get when I'm driving it? Is it for me, or is it to validate me to others? Right?
Right.
Then it starts to feel kind of silly. The whole thing starts to feel kind of silly. You mean I'm buying this for people who don't know me?
I'm buying it for them. Not for me, for them.
Right. Just to feel a sense of self-worth. That seems ridiculous. It actually is very ridiculous. I'm going to buy a Bentley. I'm going to spend $200,000 in a Bentley just to drive around. It's a car. It's a friggin' car, right?
Still going to get you from point A to B, just like another car.
That's why I ride my bike, bro. I ride my bicycle. But that's one thing. It's a question that you can start asking yourself. Does this thing that I want to buy validate my sense of self-worth? Yes or no? And you may say no at first, but you might uncover, it actually does. And that's the cycle that you want to try to break, right? But there's also a recognition. There's all these elements, right? But there's also a recognition that if I have a goal, my goal is not me. And also, society is a game. I have to play a game, right? I recognize that I have to maximize the shit out of my salary. I recognize that people working for Uber for $12 an hour, or me working at Best Buy for $12 an hour, I worked no harder than I do today, and I make exponentially more money, right? So I recognize my time value of money is very important to me, but it doesn't define my sense of self-worth. That's the separation.
What does define your sense of self-worth?
I mean, man, no external things. The main thing, I derive it from within. I have a lot of positive self-talk. I try to, if I get down on myself or down in general, I say, it's okay, John. It's okay. Everything's cool. Like, you tried, you did a good job, right? Or like, I'll say things like, I don't want to work out today. But John, like, just put on your workout clothes. Like, just try. Right? I'm always trying to speak positively to myself. And so I try to ensure that nothing from the external world is validating my sense of self-worth. And I just try to follow the energy, try to spend time with the fam, just be really grounded, that our time on this earth is super finite. We're all going to die one day. And that's it, man. I want to listen to the birds in the backyard. Seriously, like those are the things I like appreciate, right? Like so yeah.
No, I hear you on that, but again, I think what you're describing is a beautiful practice of, let's say, owning how you experience life and being able to control how you experience life, which is in the end everything, right? Because you get to decide whether even the smell of shit can be positive, because at least you can be aware that you're smelling that. So
perspective, man.
You get to reframe things, you get to repackage things, you get to be like almost the author of the own book that you're writing. So that's tremendous power there.
Yeah.
But you've been doing this consciously or unconsciously for probably since since you've been you, and it's somehow you got into this practice, whether you realize it or not.
But I got into this practice as soon as I failed.
That's where I disagree. I think you're already.
Yeah.
I think that if you didn't have this already baked into you in a very fundamental way, you wouldn't have been able to react to your failure the way you reacted. Because the way you reacted to your failure was you got back on your horse, you reverse engineered the shit out of where you needed to be, and you got yourself there, which is amazing. Again, because a lot of people that don't have that skill baked into them would have really either become, like I said, very bitter or jaded, or would have still been at Best Buy, or whatever would have happened. But again, I believe, at least my personal belief, is that you were already immersed in this practice, even unknowingly, from a much earlier age. I wouldn't dare say.
So I think I was always, so here's the separation. I was always immersed in the practice of finding leverage and chasing opportunities and knowing where I could deliver the most value for the most amount of money. Okay. But the problem is I was chasing the money for happiness. The failure led me to a breaking point of asking, why am I chasing money? What is it doing for me? So I was always that way, right? Like I've always been the kind of guy that's like, keep going, keep trying, whatever it takes. However, I had that major mental shift in my early 30s because of the failure, which led me to that perspective that I needed, so that I wasn't just chasing the money and attaching it to a sense of happiness. Because we still got to chase the money, dude. Like, life is expensive in America, right? Like that's fundamental. Like, we just have to do those type of things. But not attaching the worth of who I am to the size of my bank account is that shift.
I agree. Again, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that it's like riding. It's like any practice, whether it's riding a bicycle or, like you mentioned, becoming a skateboarding pro. Yeah. It's like if you try to teach me how to skateboard, I'm gonna be really bad at it, and I'm not in this lifetime. I probably have to start over. But
I'm terrible at it too.
But if I had, if I had the basic underpinnings, like if I had really practiced my balance and really practiced my flexibility and really practiced my resilience, or had, had the underlying like makeup for a good skateboarder, maybe I would be able to pick it up. And it maybe would seem, okay, now I went through this shift, but I had all of those key components in place. And that's kind of like what I'm arguing, is that like you could like try to teach what you've discovered to someone who hasn't been practicing that at all their entire life. And whatever, however good a teacher you may be, they would not necessarily be able to follow those same footsteps. That's what that's, I guess, the provocation that I'm having, is that, it's whether this stuff can be like repackaged into something that anybody can learn at any given point, or if you just haven't been practicing that, the underpinnings from a very early age, like asking questions, or like you said, chasing opportunity, or resilience, whatever those key characteristics are, then you're kind of in a bad place. And at least that's what I see, is that and going back to the beginning of the conversation, because of the way education is structured, instead of building on those basic blocks that make for what I would consider not necessarily a strong, but a resilient human being. So someone who's able to define their self-worth through their own meaning, someone who's able to own their journey and really own their experience in this planet, right? However short that it may be. Because we don't focus on that, then all of a sudden you get someone who's broken at 40, and now they get into mindfulness, and it's not going to be, something that necessarily they'll be able to do.
It breaks them out.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to provoke, is that in the sense, if we don't like get people like you and reverse engineer John in a really, in a really granular level, and try to understand, okay, what makes John John, and what has John's journey been, then we can't really teach it. Because I know that you experienced probably as this like groundbreaking shock when you failed miserably and you had to rebuild yourself, and you noticed this mental shift, but you were ready for it. That's what I'm pointing to. You were ready for it. Many things in your trajectory, in your journey, made you ready for that shift. And I guess that's the part that, to me, that's the meat of it, is like, what got you ready for that, and how can we get more people ready for that? Because that's the only way I can see real change happen.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue to our first conversation about the education system, right? Because what does school teach us? Subjects that are totally, entirely worthless. Seriously, like history, great, fine. Math, great. Algebra, I don't care, right? All these things that I could Google, or all these things that, and I created a post the other day, and I made the argument that any job, unless it's software engineering, unless it's being a doctor or law, right? There's a handful of professions, but I would say 95% of all professions could be taught to somebody in 6 months. I don't care what level you are. I don't care if you're the CEO. I don't care if you're the VP. I don't care if you are a marketing person or senior marketing or product management. Like, I could teach my job to somebody else who's mildly driven in 6 months, right? They know all the keywords. They know all the, the right things to say, the right meetings to go to, how to approach the director, right? Like all these programs that teach you languages in a short period of time. The same thing applies in those type of scenarios, right? They teach you like, hey, you can learn a language in record time. The reason why is because they break down a language into the 90% of words, maybe 1,000 words that people use all the time in every sentence structure, in every scenario. And then, within 6 months, you got the language down, because nobody else uses the other 40 million words, right? And so like school essentially is teaching you the 40 million words, right? But I don't need any of that. What I need from school is I need somebody to teach me about life. I need somebody to teach me about failure, about mindfulness, about what it takes to live a meaningful life by the data, right? Like, why does someone live a meaningful life? Why has the course on happiness and living a meaningful life at Yale been the #1 most successful course ever in their history, right? Why? Because people are fiending for that. They don't give a shit about the subjects, okay? Because they all inherently recognize that those subjects can be Googled if they're mildly motivated, right? Teach me about like life, okay? Teach me about how to get back up. Teach me about personality types and dealing with people and recognizing that my self-worth should not be tied to the things that I own. Like, ingrain that in me from a young age and watch what winds up happening. I think that's the change that needs to happen, right? Get rid of the subjects, get rid of all that bullshit, get rid of, in a lot of cases, I would argue, get rid of the institutional walls and teach people about life. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask for a better conversation because we got back exactly where we began and we did a full circle.
Hold on 1 second. What's up, buddy?
Can you go back to there?
Can you do it in the back? Can you do it in the back? Mommy's got her computer in the back. I'll be done in a few minutes, okay?
Yeah, we're almost back.
No, that's cool.
But anyway, John, I mean, what I wanted to say, I really want to thank you because to me that I didn't plan it to be that way, but we did a full circle.
Yeah, we did. I love it.
And we went through your journey and we got back to education. And I just want to thank you so much. It's really inspiring to meet people like you. And thank you for everything that you post and all the inspiration that you bring and being able to integrate. You know, I think it's especially powerful, the fact that it's not just like, you know, you have $400 million sitting around in your bank account and you are like doing whatever you think you're actually being able to balance things and live a really beautiful life, provide, and still be who you want to be. And I just think that's such a beautiful message that you send out through just being who you are. So
if we could just teach that, if we could teach that to everybody, man, just the simple empowerment, you know?
Yeah, I think we'd be talking about a very different world. And it doesn't even have to be everybody. I think it could be 10% as a population instead of 1%. And it's already a very different world. But really, thank you so much for the inspiration and for everything that you bring to the table. And I'm really grateful and thankful for our conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Me too. I loved it. It was awesome. Thanks for the invite.
All right. Well, everybody, this was Tea with Gabriel, John Marty. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right.